Now then, a ceasefire in Gaza within days. Perhaps that was the word today from UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon. But his optimism came on the same day that Israeli forces pushed deeper and deeper into Gaza, even shelling the UN compound and its warehouse packed with aid. So, can anyone really say that this offensive is nearing its end? The Israelis are still denying independent access to international journalists, so Paul Wood sent this report from the Gaza border.
The UN's Gaza headquarters in flames, hit by Israeli shells. A massive explosion set alight the main food store. UN workers desperately tried to save what they could.
One by one, the warehouses are going up. We're now trying to build a buffer zone between the warehouses and the offices to try and stop the offices. We've lost all our food and all our medicine to this fire. We need the shelling to stop. That's what we need. The shelling is inside the compound.
The Israeli army said it had come under fire from the UN building. But the UN says that privately Israeli officials accept there were no gunmen there.
First of all, well,
the Israeli Prime Minister apologised to the UN Secretary-General.
The Israeli forces were attacked, and as it happened, the response was very harsh, and I'm very sorry.
This is the 20th day of the Israeli offensive. Ground troops have been steadily advancing for a week now. Today they moved through southern Gaza City. The UN compound is here. Further north they hit a building housing international broadcasters. The BBC's Arabic TV correspondent witnessed some of the fighting.
The situation is very dangerous in here. The Israeli tank shells fell in everywhere in Gaza Strip, even on the UN headquarters in Gaza, where the fire still continue. We get appeals from phone calls from all the people in Tel El-Hawa area, where they still surrounded by the Israeli tanks.
White phosphorus was fired at the UN compound. Israel says it uses this weapon legally. Human rights campaigners disagree.
Well, clearly the use of white phosphorus in populated areas is a violation of the Geneva Conventions. And now, after a week of telling them to stop it, what we've really feared has finally come true, and we're seeing massive fires around Gaza City.
This is why the UN Secretary-General says Gaza's suffering has now reached an unbearable point. For all the talk of a ceasefire, today's fighting in Gaza has been the most intense, the most bitter yet. But precisely because we are in the diplomatic endgame, the Israelis are pushing deeper than ever into Gaza City. The last hours and days of this could be the worst yet for Gazans. Paul Wood, BBC News, on Israel's border with Gaza.
Israeli tanks and troops have advanced into heavily populated areas of Gaza City. In one airstrike, a top Hamas official, Said Sayam, and 2 other senior leaders were killed. In another attack, the United Nations headquarters in Gaza was hit, forcing the UN to suspend aid distribution. The Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert said it was targeted after militants opened fire from there, although he apologized to the UN Secretary-General. As clashes continued, Palestinian gunmen managed to fire more rockets into Israel. There's also been intense diplomatic activity to broker a ceasefire. Egypt is trying to arrange for crossing points into Gaza to be reopened to allow in aid and humanitarian supplies. Well, joining me from New York is Yahya Mamassani, the Arab League's ambassador to the United Nations. A very warm welcome to you. Let's turn to that intense diplomatic activity we just talked about. What more could Arab nations be doing to help push forward a potential ceasefire?
I think the Arab nations are doing a lot. The Arab League is involved. You know that at the moment there are intensive consultation and negotiations between Egypt and the parties concerned to try to broker a ceasefire. And I think, as far as we know, there has been some significant, improvement in the negotiations, and it looks like at least we hope that we will come to a deal soon. very soon.
So Hamas, as we hear, is demanding a full withdrawal of Israeli forces from the Gaza Strip in 5 to 7 days. And if so, they'll abide by a year-long ceasefire, which could then be renewed. That's a substantial negotiating point. Does the Arab League see that as a realistic point?
Well, of course, we see it as a realistic point as far as the implementation of the Security Council Resolution 1860. This resolution, which has been adopted almost unanimously, calls for an immediate, sustainable, durable ceasefire. And this is what the international community is even demanding. And of course, this should be also accompanied by the withdrawal of the Israeli forces to the territories from which they started their aggression. Of course, this is the duty of every member of the United Nations to work to implement that resolution, and this is a basic part of it.
Now, the issue of stopping weapons smuggling from Egypt into Gaza is one of Israel's key demands. And we know the Defence Minister, Tzipi Livni, is travelling to Washington right now to deal with that very issue. What role can the Arab League play there?
Look, let me start from really put this problem into its proper context. Israel occupies Gaza and the rest of the Palestinian territory. This is the source of all the problem and the evil that we face in the Middle East. Now, whatever the parties concerned who are negotiating agree to regarding this weapons smuggling, I think this is done. If they agree to this, the parties concerned, then we are okay.
Well, it is. It's a fundamental issue. You're not going to get a ceasefire unless Israel is happy with a number of issues, and the same goes for Hamas.
But you see, the whole thing is a package. The Security Council resolution has to be implemented, and it is a package. You cannot pick up one only item on smuggling and finish the rest. What about the openings of the crossing? What about lifting the blockade? If you lift the blockade, there is no reason to smuggle. Come on, if you really lift the blockade, why should anybody smuggle? Everything will be, open. What I'm saying here is this: the Security Council resolution have the whole ingredient of success. So let's implement the resolution as it is stated, paragraph by paragraph, item by item, and make it as a package deal.
Yahya Mamoussani, the Arab League's ambassador to the United Nations, thank you very much.
Medical facilities in the Gaza Strip are at the point of collapse, according to 2 Western doctors who've been working there during the conflict. They warn that more patients could die as basic medical equipment runs out. Christian Fraser has been speaking to one of them near the Egyptian border with Gaza.
12 days ago, while reporting from the Rafah crossing, we came across 2 doctors from Norway, Dr. Mads Gilbert and Dr. Erik Fosse from Norway, the Norwegian aid community. Today, they've both returned to Egypt from Gaza. We're here in the rather surreal surroundings of the nearby town of El Arish, and I'm glad to say that Dr. Mads Gilbert can join us. You look exhausted. Tell us what it's been like.
Well, I think we could sum it up by saying it's been a living hell for the Palestinians. We have survived. I've been to many wars. We were both in Beirut in '82, but I think we have concluded that we've never seen anything like this. Lacking everything, all sorts of resources, manpower, beds, capacity, disposables, oxygen masks.
I notice you've got a torch around your neck. Are you working when you're at the Shifa hospital in blackouts?
Yeah, sure. But they're so used to it. You know, the Shifa hospital is running on 2 huge generators, and it's a 500-bed hospital. It's a modern hospital. Could have been a modern hospital. It was. And the generator breaks down quite frequently, more frequently the last days. And I talked to the guys maintaining it, and they say, we have no spare parts. We have to make the spare parts. The same with the ventilators in the hospital. The monitors, we didn't have enough monitors. These heroes in the Palestinian healthcare system.
Because they're working with families who are outside who are also living under the threat of bombs.
Sure, and the doctors are being killed, and the nurses are being killed, and they see their family members having been killed, coming in as casualties on their call. And everybody knows everybody in Gaza. You've all seen on the television the entrance to Shifa Hospital. That's where we've been working. They carry the wounded in their hands, in private cars, in ambulances, and they come in masses. One day we had 120 casualties, one day 130 casualties. And it's just terrible. And it's, you have to sort them. Who are the dying, who should not be treated, who are the walking, lucky, wounded ones, and who are those with salvageable injuries. You see some terrific, awful, terrible amputations, often very high, looking like the explosion comes from the ground and up, often amputations all up to the hip, including the genitals, of course, and completely beyond salvage.
You've been very vocal in your criticism of the Israeli Defense Force, and it has been said that you've turned political. What do you say to that?
You know, I'm a whole person. I'm an emotional person, I'm a professional person, I'm a social person, I'm a political person. And I think we all are. And I think we all have the right to be that. And if the doctor should not follow his Hippocratic oath, I would be a traitor to my patients. If we didn't speak up on these conditions that the Palestinians have today, we would have betrayed the Palestinian patients and the Palestinian population. They are voiceless.